A long time ago, I heard the expression, every setting is a character unto itself. I've always liked that because I think there's a lot of truth in it. You develop relationships with places. You get to know them the way you know other people. They have identities and sometimes even personalities. I think that's just true. It's a way of interpreting and familiarizing yourself with the world around you. In fiction, it's a little different. Sure, writers characterize places and things, but are they actually characters? Do they participate in the narrative that way? Well, I recently read the book Titus Grown by Mervyn Peake, and I gotta say, it answers that question in stunning fashion. The story's main setting is alive and deeply involved. It is indisputably a character. As a writer, I think there's so much to learn from this weird thing. So, allow me to acquaint you. It is my pleasure to introduce the living castle, Gormenghast. A big thanks to ExpressVPN for making this video possible, and to all of our supporters on Patreon. We love you. Alright, that opener was a little dishonest. When I say living castle, I don't actually mean to say that Gormenghast is biologically alive. To me, setting as character is not the same thing as setting as life form. There are plenty of examples of that out there, like Pandora from James Cameron's Avatar and Ego the Living Planet from Guardians of the Galaxy. The sort of life I'm talking about is the life we ascribe. Someone lives not just by breathing, consuming, mating. They live through their distinct identity and the power to manifest it. We recognize them as the sum of their traits and their actions. And if you think that's a tall order for something inanimate, you're right. It is very difficult to give this kind of life to your setting, which is why I think Gormenghast is such an important series of books. Mervyn Peake is one of the few authors I have ever seen do this, and it's exactly as weird as you would expect it to be. A little background, the series is about a sprawling, labyrinthine, city-sized castle whose occupants are forever bent under the weight of ancient tradition. In Gormenghast, if the ritual books say to sneeze at a particular time of day, your nose shall stand at the ready. It is a place of blanketing dust and echoing darkness in practices so old, no one remembers why they even began. They simply grind on, an unstoppable clockwork of busy bodies. This is the essential character of Gormenghast, and you feel it everywhere. At every possible opportunity, the author launches off into long, spiraling descriptive passages about the architecture, the scenery, the weather. Normally, I'd discourage that. We've all run across authors who are so in love with their setting that they'll drone on until we've forgotten we're even reading a story anymore. H.P. Lovecraft, Victor Hugo, you two know what you did. But for once, it actually feels like it works. I mean, I didn't get it at first. When the book opened with a long description of the castle and the surrounding country, I did kind of feel myself getting impatient. But the longer I spent getting to know the castle, the more sense this kind of writing made. And the deeper it went. Here, listen to this passage. Was there something about these vertical acres of stone that mouthed of a stillness that was more complete? A silence that lay within and drummed? Small winds rustled on the castle's outer shell. Leaves dropped away or were brushed by a bird's wing. The rain ceased and creepers dripped. But within the walls, not even the light changed, save when the sun broke through in a series of dusty halls in the southern wing. Remoteness. This comes from a section of the story where the world around the castle seems to be changing, and the castle is standing stoic in the middle of it. The best way I can think to describe this writing is ensouling. Peake is breathing life into something inanimate by spending time on its potential emotionality. He treats the setting like a person who can feel things, and we can't help but feel a little bit of that as a result. He even goes so far as to personify it at times. The towers aren't just towers, they're mutilated fingers rising up out of the knuckled masonry to point blasphemously at heaven. The old wooden buttresses don't just make sounds, they speak and they breathe. And because he's able to make the castle feel like a person, it makes so much sense when we see it filling its role as a member of the cast. People have character, intrinsically. So can places, as Gormenghast shows. But for a setting to become a character, it's got to engage in some way. In my opinion, it's not enough for it to have emotional qualities, even if they go so deep that the place becomes humanized and sympathetic. It's when those qualities reach the other characters in the story that I think the setting truly begins to live. And boy, does Gormenghast do that. At first, it's easy to mistake the cast as extremely colorful and bizarre, and they are. The two purple twins, Cora and Clarice, with their indomitable shared stupidity, Dr. Prunesqualler with his abrasive flamboyance, rumpled old Sourdust, bearer of the ancient rituals and rites, Flay, the manservant, whose knees creak through the halls, the mountainous, jovial mass of Chef Swelter. It's a motley crew, but not all on their own. So much of who these characters are comes from their interaction with the castle. Yes, any competent writer will connect characters to setting, but usually it's just a matter of circumstance. To grow up in a farm is far different to grow up in a city, things like that. In this series, the personality of the castle is the influencing power. That ageless, endless, strangling routine, the consuming vastness, the pervading sense of exhaustion in every stone, it sculpts the characters, guides their decisions, almost as if the castle is whispering in their ear how to feel, what to do. It's interesting enough that you get characters like Lord Sepulchrave, whose melancholy is as deep as the castle is old and seems almost to be a manifestation of his unbreakable bond with it. But the bulk of the plot revolves around even more interesting relationships, points of conflict between the other cast members and the castle. Steerpike, the villainous protagonist of the story, understands Gormenghast all too well and uses his familiarity to manipulate everyone inside of it, bringing a whirlwind of change that ripples through the stones themselves and into all the many lives they enclose. Fuchsia, one of the other main characters, loves Gormenghast, but is a soul apart, wanting desperately to be free of its oppressive influence. Now, I've been talking about the castle at large this whole time, but let's not forget that settings are nested full of other settings. Each scene might happen in a different room, and each room can provide a different layer of personality to the larger setting. And it's truer here than anywhere else. Steerpike, for instance, he comes from the great kitchen down in the sweltering bowels of the castle, where his hatred was crystallized from black coal into shadowy diamond. He finds the secret places of the castle and conquers them. He sees the weaknesses and abuses them. To him, the castle is a plaything, a sickly old delirious regent to manipulate. Fuchsia, on the other hand, she has one secret haven within Gormenghast, a dark, warm place which she imagines to be a world apart from the rest of the castle. It is her domain, full of lost things and hidden treasures, where she never has to be bothered by the tedium of ritual. She goes there to imagine and to be lost. And when it's soiled by Steerpike discovering it, she begins wandering off in the woods near the castle, exploring for new secret places. To her, the setting is empathetic. They reveal themselves to her so that she is never without her special place apart. That is part of her relationship with the character of the setting. This is what I mean when I say that Gormenghast is alive. It is a character in the drama who, without a true voice, without even the ability to act, interacts with the other players. The author understood who the setting was and bent it to fulfill that role as it met with other characters. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever seen it done to quite this extent. I don't know how often you can get away with this, but for this series, it's perfect. I came away from reading Titus Groan with a rare feeling of intimacy that I think would be difficult to find in any other way. Speaking of things difficult to find, Gormenghast was a really difficult story to read and research. It's kind of a rare book. But we run into research difficulties all the time these days, what with all the media we need to watch being spread across 1 billion streaming platforms and all, so it's nothing too new. Luckily, we've found a little trick that makes all the shows and movies we need to watch loads easier to get a hold of. Our savior, ExpressVPN. The problem is that Netflix and other streaming platforms are finicky. Yes, they say, we have the show you want to watch, and then you get to the streaming app and lo and behold, the things you want to see aren't even available in your country. This happens to us all the time. Recently, we were trying to find Twin Peaks: The Return on Netflix, and it just wasn't there. All we could find was the original show. Pretty big letdown when you're excited to watch a show. Thankfully, now that we have ExpressVPN, we can literally just flip a switch, tell Netflix we're in Brazil, and voila, there's our show. You'd be shocked how many titles this is the case for. Rick and Morty, Adventure Time, both versions of The Office. Honestly, using these streaming apps without ExpressVPN is like being in a library without a fiction section. You're just so limited. It's also a lot like having someone breathing down your neck while you read. The internet is always watching. When you use ExpressVPN, for once, you won't have to worry about some robot watching what you do and collecting your data. You'll be protected. So if you want to see all the shows and movies platforms like Netflix promise you, and you want to do it safely, hurry and visit expressvpn.com/tailfoundry. If you go now, fans of the show can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Again, visit expressvpn.com/tailfoundry to find out how you can get 3 months of service for free. Before we wrap up, I'd like to give a quick thanks to all the helpful humans who support the show on Patreon. All those words you see scrolling in the background of these videos? Those are actually the names of our Patreon maintenance crew, without whom this show would be impossible. And a special word to all of our top patrons, Lord Gate, RPG Grenade, and the Autumn Rider. Thank you so much. And that's it for this video. There's usually a few weeks between uploads, so if you want more Tail Foundry in the meantime, come join our community. We have a Discord server that's basically like a big family of creatives, a lot of love there. We also run writing groups on Twitch every week if you want to get some practice in. You can find links to all of it in the description. Hope to see you there. Until then, thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next time. Bye!